Marcus Ellwood, the brilliant Australian doctor, and Laila Al-Mansoor, the rebellious daughter of a wealthy Dubai sheikh. Two lives that should never have crossed, were bound together by a forbidden affair that spiraled into betrayal, obsession, and ultimately, bloody murder. Dr. Marcus Ellwood had built a reputation that seemed untouchable. In the heart of Sydney, his name was spoken with admiration, not only among patients, but also within the elite circles of society. He was tall, sharp-featured, and carried himself with the confidence of someone who knew he was at the top of his profession. His clinic stood in a glass-fronted building overlooking the harbor, a place that symbolized both his success and his unshakable authority. Politicians, businessmen, and celebrities all trusted him with their health, and Marcus never failed to deliver results. But behind a shining surface, there were cracks in the carefully painted image. Marcus had always been ambitious, but ambition was not enough to explain the choices he sometimes made. He thrived on control, on knowing that people depended on him not just for medical expertise, but also for their secrets. Many of his patients shared private details in vulnerable moments, and Marcus carried that knowledge like hidden weapons. To the outside world, he was the kind of doctor who saved lives, but within himself, he was a man who carried dangerous desires. The respect he received from the medical community was like fuel to his ego. Awards decorated his office walls, and students at the university where he occasionally lectured treated him like a legend. He was admired, envied, and even feared by rivals who could not match his sharp mind. Yet, despite having everything, a thriving career, wealth, and influence, Marcus felt restless. He longed for something that would shake him out of the monotony of his perfect life. The craving for excitement gnawed at him quietly, waiting for the right spark to ignite into something uncontrollable. That spark would soon arrive in the form of a patient unlike any he had treated before. Sheikh Khalid Al-Mansoor was not an ordinary patient. He arrived in Sydney on a private jet, accompanied by assistants and guards who never left his side. His presence alone turned heads wherever he went, but he preferred to keep his medical visits low profile. Wealthy beyond imagination, Khalid had invested in real estate, oil, and international businesses, yet when it came to matters of his health, he trusted only a handful of experts around the world. Among them, Marcus Ellwood had become his most reliable doctor. Khalid suffered from recurring heart problems, something he rarely spoke about outside of his immediate circle. For a man who valued strength and control, admitting weakness was unthinkable. That was why his trips to Australia were discreet. The appointments were arranged quietly, often late at night, to avoid unnecessary attention. Marcus handled these consultations with professionalism, aware that his patient's influence reached far beyond the walls of his clinic. Every detail was kept confidential, every treatment carried out with the precision Khalid demanded. On one such visit, Khalid brought his daughter, Laila. Her arrival was unexpected, and it immediately changed the atmosphere in Marcus's office. She was striking in every sense, elegant in her movements, commanding in presence, and clearly accustomed to a life of privilege. She appeared more curious than worried, watching Marcus as he examined her father. Unlike Khalid, who guarded his vulnerability, Laila seemed eager to observe and understand. Marcus found himself unsettled by her presence. Patients' family members often sat quietly, but Laila's gaze lingered on him in ways that felt different, almost magnetic. It was the first time Marcus sensed that this encounter with the Al-Mansoor family would extend far beyond the professional boundaries he had carefully built. From the moment Marcus first laid eyes on Laila, something inside him shifted. He had met countless women through his work and social life, yet none had left such an immediate impression. Laila carried herself with a mixture of confidence and mystery, her beauty sharpened by the quiet defiance in her expression. She was not the type to fade into the background, even in her father's powerful shadow. To Marcus, she represented something he didn't even realize he had been craving, a taste of danger wrapped in elegance. At first, their interactions were brief and cautious. She would occasionally ask questions about her father's health, her voice calm, but her eyes filled with curiosity. Marcus responded as any doctor would, keeping his answers professional, but he couldn't ignore the way his pulse quickened whenever she entered the room. What began as stolen glances soon grew into longer exchanges, each carrying a charge that neither of them could deny. Laila, unlike her father, seemed restless in the world she belonged to. Her life of privilege, luxury, and strict expectations had left her searching for something more. Marcus, with his sharp mind and controlled charm, was unlike the men she had grown up around. He represented freedom, intellect, and a daring kind of rebellion. Their chemistry built slowly but dangerously, crossing invisible lines that both knew should never be broken. What started as admiration turned into fascination, and fascination transformed into desire. Marcus tried to suppress it, convincing himself it was nothing more than a passing distraction. But each meeting with Laila made that lie harder to believe. An unspoken bond was forming, pulling them toward each other, and neither was prepared for how far it would eventually take them. The secret relationship between Marcus and Laila grew in the shadows, carefully hidden from everyone around them. At first, their meetings were rare, brief encounters disguised as innocent conversations during college appointments. But soon, stolen moments were no longer enough. Marcus began arranging late-night visits under the pretense of medical follow-ups, slipping away from his orderly life into a world of secrecy and thrill. For him, it was a dangerous game that stirred both fear and excitement. Hotels and quiet corners of Sydney became their safe havens. Away from watchful eyes, they created a private world where Marcus was no longer just a doctor and Laila was not just a daughter under her father's control. They exchanged gifts, Marcus offering jewelry and books, Laila bringing tokens from her travels. Their conversations ran deep, filled with laughter, vulnerability, and whispered promises of a future beyond the walls of secrecy. But with each passing month, the risk grew heavier. Rumors began to spread within Khalid's household staff, whispers of Laila's unexplained absences and her growing distance from family duties. The Sheikh, known for his strictness, started to notice her defiance. His suspicion grew stronger when she requested more frequent trips to Sydney, each time insisting she accompany him to his medical appointments. Marcus believed their bond could withstand anything, blinded by desire and a false sense of invincibility. He underestimated the reach of Khalid's influence and the loyalty of those who served him. The romance that had felt like an intoxicating escape was, in truth, a ticking clock counting down to exposure. Neither Marcus nor Laila realized that their secret was already casting shadows far beyond their private moments, shadows that would soon engulf them both. The fragile balance shattered the day Khalid uncovered the truth. For months he had watched Laila with growing unease, unsettled by her distracted manner and frequent insistence on staying longer in Sydney. His suspicions sharpened into certainty when one of his trusted aides discreetly reported seeing her enter a hotel late at night, accompanied not by friends or relatives, but by Marcus himself. The betrayal struck deeply. To Khalid, it was not just a matter of family honor, but a direct insult to his authority. He confronted Marcus in his private office, choosing a late evening when the clinic was empty. The atmosphere was heavy, filled with tension that neither man could ignore. Khalid demanded an explanation, his words sharp, his tone unyielding. Marcus, cornered and terrified, tried to defend himself, but found his reasoning hollow even in his own ears. He insisted that what he shared with Laila was love, but to Khalid, it was nothing more than manipulation and shame. The confrontation grew heated, voices rising, tempers flaring. Khalid made it clear that the affair had to end immediately, or Marcus would lose not only his career, but possibly his freedom. He warned of consequences that extended beyond the reach of Australian law, consequences that carried the weight of his influence and power. Instead of retreating, Marcus's obsession deepened. The thought of losing Laila filled him with desperation, and anger twisted inside him like a blade. What had started as an infatuation had now become a dangerous fixation. In that moment, Marcus saw Khalid not as a patient, but as an enemy, a wall standing between him and the woman he believed he could not live without. It was the spark that would soon ignite into something deadly. Marcus's mind became a battlefield of fear, obsession, and desperation. The confrontation with Khalid had left him shaken, yet instead of pulling back, he convinced himself that there was only one way forward. He replayed the Sheikh's threats in his mind over and over, imagining his career destroyed, his reputation ruined, and his secret love ripped away. The thought of humiliation and loss consumed him until it twisted into something far darker. He began to believe that Khalid's existence was the sole obstacle standing between him and happiness with Laila. As a doctor, Marcus had knowledge most people could never dream of. He understood the body's vulnerabilities, the delicate balance between life and death. And with that knowledge came power. He began sketching out a plan, cold and meticulous, as if it were another clinical procedure. Instead of scalpels and stethoscopes, he turned to the tools of poison. He knew the precise combinations of drugs that could mimic a natural heart attack, leaving little trace even under scrutiny. In the quiet of his study, Marcus prepared the lethal dose. Vials, syringes, and carefully measured powders lay across his desk, arranged like instruments before surgery. He rehearsed the process in his head, convincing himself it was not murder but necessity. Without Khalid, he told himself, the future he dreamed of with Laila could finally exist. He disguised his plan under the veil of professionalism, deciding the opportunity would come during a private consultation. It would look like a tragic collapse, a failing heart giving way to age and stress. No one would question a doctor's attempt to save his patient. Marcus believed he had created the perfect crime, one that would free him forever. The night of the murder arrived with unsettling calm. Khalid had agreed to a private consultation at Marcus's home office, a setting chosen to maintain discretion away from hospital corridors and curious eyes. Marcus welcomed him with his usual professionalism, masking the storm of thoughts raging beneath his composed exterior. Every gesture was carefully calculated, every word rehearsed to keep suspicion at bay. Khalid, weary from travel and carrying the weight of his health issues, settled into the leather chair where so many patients had trusted Marcus before. The examination began as routine, blood pressure checks, notes scribbled onto a chart, questions about diet and stress. To anyone else, it would have looked like an ordinary consultation between doctor and patient. But Marcus knew this was the moment he had been planning for, the moment his life would veer into irreversible darkness. With practiced ease, he prepared an injection, claiming it was a simple medication to steady Khalid's condition. The Sheikh never suspected betrayal. After all, Marcus had been his trusted physician for years. Within minutes of receiving the dose, Khalid's body reacted violently. His breathing grew erratic, his skin turned pale, and his frame slumped against the chair. Marcus pretended to spring into action, performing resuscitation techniques that he knew would fail. He shouted for help as if fighting to save a life, but no one was there to witness the truth. By the time silence filled the room, Khalid was gone. To the outside world, it would appear as though his heart had simply given out, a natural end to a long struggle with illness. Marcus wiped the sweat from his brow, convincing himself he had succeeded. He believed he had created the perfect illusion, death disguised as fate. Layla's world collapsed the moment she learned her father had died under Marcus's care. At first, she was consumed with grief, believing the tragedy was nothing more than the cruel hand of fate. She clung to Marcus for comfort, seeking reassurance from the man she trusted most. He held her, whispered explanations of heart failure, and painted himself as the devoted doctor who had done everything possible. For a time, she believed him. But grief has a way of sharpening instincts, and soon doubts began to creep in. Small details unsettled her. She noticed Marcus avoiding questions about the exact cause, shifting the topic whenever she pressed too hard. The timing of her father's collapse gnawed at her, and whispers from Khalid's loyal staff planted seeds of suspicion. A servant who had accompanied the sheik on the final visit mentioned Marcus's unusual insistence on privacy that night. Another recalled seeing medical vials disposed of hastily after the incident. The pieces, though fragile, began forming a disturbing picture. Layla's curiosity turned into fear when she discovered receipts hidden in Marcus's desk, purchases for rare drugs not linked to her father's treatment. She found messages on his phone written in desperation, filled with promises of a life together once obstacles were gone. The truth struck her with brutal force. Marcus had not been her father's savior. He had been his executioner. Torn between love and horror, she made a choice that would seal Marcus's fate. Layla contacted investigators, turning over every shred of evidence she had uncovered. The very woman he had killed became the one who exposed him. In her betrayal lay the final blow, a truth that shattered Marcus's illusion of victory and dragged him into the shadows of justice. Police moved swiftly once Layla handed over the evidence. The web Marcus had woven so carefully unraveled in a matter of days. Investigators pieced together the timeline with precision. Medical records that didn't match prescribed treatments, bank statements showing suspicious purchases, and Layla's damning testimony tying him directly to Khalid's death. The image of the respected doctor collapsed under the weight of facts he could no longer deny. For the first time in his life, Marcus was not in control. As detectives prepared to arrest him, Marcus retreated into the solitude of his home. The once pristine study, lined with books and framed accolades, became a cage filled with suffocating silence. He stared at the walls decorated with awards that now mocked him, reminders of a career built on saving lives, undone by the taking of just one. His obsession, the affair, the plan, all of it had led him here, cornered with no escape. Instead of surrendering to the justice system, Marcus chose his own ending. He opened a drawer, pulled out the very instruments of his crime, and prepared a fatal dose. Alone in the dim light, he scrawled a handwritten confession, pages stained with the frantic strokes of a man unraveling. When the police forced entry hours later, they found him collapsed in a pool of blood, the confession resting beside him. News of his death spread quickly, shaking both the medical community and society at large. To many, it was the fall of a man they once admired. To others, it was justice finally served. Layla returned to Dubai burdened by guilt, her family fractured, her life forever changed. Marcus's story closed not with triumph, but with ruin, a chilling reminder of how obsession can turn brilliance into tragedy.